we're in a bit of a hiatus at the moment in terms of film releases, and so the big momentum sort of slowed down. But there have been some tidbits from the recent Top Gun film, and they talk about how they'd used a number of Venice cameras, and the number of in order of about 50. And I'm just wondering where on earth they'd stick these things.
Is this the Venice? Oh no, very
Sony.
Sorry,
Sony makes the Venice,
right?
and it's a small box that's highly customizable. You can configure it in many ways. Has a lot of built-in features that makes it really attractive. And I imagine what they've done with this number of cameras is that they've attached and hidden them all through the aircraft, because what they're supposed to have done is done actual dog flights. And because you can't do too many flights, but you can have multiple angles, is that just cover them in cameras, get all the angles, but you can get all the takes you want in a limited amount of passes.
Yeah. Because of what you said about the angles, I heard the original Top Gun, most of the footage was unusable. This was Tony Scott, right? And his saving grace, I remember reading about this, was that everyone had breathing apparatus on.
Yeah.
So they just completely ADR'd everything.
Yeah.
So all of that footage of people in the aircraft was just either some sort of lagging B-roll before they did whatever they did. Not B-roll, but like just stuff, fluff.
Well, you're not going to see their mouth moving, so
together.
they could have done that. Yeah,
they pieced it together, and it's amazing.
The last Mission Impossible with Tom Cruise flying the helicopter was incredible, and he was on his own in the helicopter and learned how to be a pilot to do this, and had done over 2,000 hours to become proficient enough to be able to do these sort of rolls through the canyon.
Oh my gosh.
They would rig the cameras to the helicopter, and they'd roll and he'd take off and he'd act to them. He knew where they were as he was flying.
Wow.
And they had some of them on motion control so they could do moves inside them, because there's no one there or attached to the chopper at the time to operate these things. They were basically on their own. So that probably would have been setting that up to the next phase. Is well, why don't we just throw a bunch onto a jet?
Jeez.
Now 50 is quite a number. But therein lies another problem, is having matching lenses. And so we find out that they've been using Sigma primes, which is
not bad.
A recent release from Sigma, and they've developed these cinema grade lenses which have a very sharp rendition and be a great match with the Venice, and they're widely available, so you'll be able to get a number of them that are all matched, especially in 50 different angles and 2 different jets and things. That would and they're cheap as well, so you could only $5,000 US each, and you could get a number of them where if they were exotic lenses from Panavision, you'd probably got every Panavision lens off the planet on there, and if you lost them all, then there would be a massive hole in the market, because a lot of us
they're
have been
so rare. Well, not rare, but they don't manufacture a ton of them.
No, they make their own lenses, and a lot of these lenses have been used on hundreds of films for the last 30 years.
Wow.
You could probably spot the same lens in many of the films if it had a unique characteristic. And they've just been fantastic glass and been widely accommodated. There's even some of them that would move around by request based on their serial number. And so a cinematographer goes, we used this one on the film a couple of years ago. I want that one again. And I'll look up the serial number, and they go, well, it's currently on this film in the middle of nowhere. You'll have to wait 6 months, but we'll get it for you. And
wow. Okay.
This is anamorphic glass, I'm assuming.
Yeah, primarily a lot of those particular lenses would come from the anamorphic side of Panavision. They certainly have a large range of lenses from Super 35 spherical to VistaVision IMAX type 70mm glass, and they all have unique properties.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember the first time that we worked together and I had my little anamorphic glass.
Yes, that's right.
Which you still have.
which I have. It's a Century Optics. Oh my gosh, I've got it here. Let me get it.
Oh, are we going to compare, are we?
Well,
comparing.
to show how it works.
Oh, look out. Oh, yeah. Nice.
We were filming this short film. There's no point putting that film out.
The title's missing.
Yeah. So we were filming this project, and there was a scene where they had some soldiers coming in, and I thought, you know what? I just want the blue line, the horizontal blue line. I was just like that back then, still am. And I had this Century Optics thing, and it was like, wow, this is the here you go.
So it's a lens attachment.
Yeah. It's focused to infinity, so you still only have one focus ring to work with.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you attach it to an FD, and it came out really, really good.
Yeah, these got a thread, so you just find a lens that'll suit it. This sort of thing would probably perform really well with a 50mm.
Yeah.
And but even then, there's still a lot of degradation with the optics, and it these make it very difficult to acquire sharps quickly, and I think it's just a lot of stuffing around each time you make an adjustment. But once it's set up, you get quite good pictures out of it. And
Yeah. I mean, I like the stop-down look of the anamorphic, because if you have it too wide open, the thin blue line becomes a thick blue line, and I don't like that.
Yeah. So the anamorphics, if you've got some vintage ones, there's a whole plethora of artifacts that are inherited by the design of the technology. Some of which is the flare characteristics. It's usually because there's a prism in the front with a curved shape. Anything with it will create a horizontal line based on that. And you shooting wide open, you'll have more light bounce around in the lens, and it's just going to flare out.
All right. Let me just grab something.
Mm.
You can cut to it now.
Yeah, okay.
Grab it.
There we are.
There we go.
Miserabizer.
Reminds me of
Oh.
the U2 clip. She moves in mysterious ways. They must have been moving that around.
Yeah, I came up in a conversation recently what it was actually called, and they call it a Miserabizer.
Oh, right.
Which is basically just a rotating barrel anamorphic element, and you just call up Panavision and ask for one of them, and you'll get this sort of effect. And this lens has a squeeze of 1.33.
Yes.
And this would accommodate a 16:9 sensor.
It can accommodate 4:3, and it goes to 16:9. And if it has a 16:9, it goes to 235 or something.
Yeah, well, it probably fit both, but the more common one is a 2 times, which is a 4:3.
Going to
size
235,
aperture.
yeah.
Mm.
And these 16:9 ones are actually quite rare. There's very few professional ones to be found. Yeah.
Why is that, do you think?
Classically, they were built to match 2 times ones with a digital camera. So they would have been able to get a 4:3 chip, did a sensor, and mount a 1.33 lens to that to get the 239 stretch.
Mm.
And the film gates were everywhere, so you were able to get a 4-perf Super 35 camera and shoot 2 times anamorphic on that.
Wasn't it when we went back to film stock? It was they had Super 35, and they wanted to go wider to differentiate themselves from TV, which was 4:3. Is that right?
Well,
and they had the audio track on the side.
the prestige of cinemas is always meant to be better than TV.
Yeah.
These days, this is not so much.
Yeah.
And that it would be a bigger picture, more epic, much louder sound, much more subtlety with the contrast. So you'd have more detail on the highlights, more detail on the shadows. TVs were relatively limited with what they could broadcast and their range, especially with the image and the sound. And they certainly weren't very wide. They were probably 4:3 sets as well. And by the time you crop a 239 cinema picture into there, you've lost 30% of your image, top and bottom, and
33%.
yeah.
Wow.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, back in the days of PAL and NTSC, wow, that was never the same color. I remember we used to call that, because the color thing as it was going down the screen, right? The flyback, I think it was called. We would go to the next line, and NTSC would always go back to the same line. And so if you had a drift in the signal, you'd have the green and the red just spill sideways onto the screen because of the horizontal horizontal refresh was stuffed. And PAL, phase alternating line, it goes from one side and then it starts that side and goes that side and then starts that side. And so it's correcting itself as it goes down.
Yep.
And so PAL was so much better. You'd watch tennis or something on PAL at 25 frames per second and it's just beautiful. And then you'd go to the tennis in 30 frames per second, well, 29.97 frames per second. 27, what?
23.976.
No, 29.
2997 would have been a broadcast rate.
Yeah, it's empty. And it was just terrible, but I think it was because of the pull down from what I was seeing. But
Well,
yeah,
if
it was
PAL's
there.
better, how come Europe never implemented it?
It did.
They're still NTSC, aren't they?
No. NTSC's only
Europe started
America.
with 25. They've always been there. The same as the power base, which is at 50 hertz.
Yeah, it's from the power system.
Oh, right, right.
And NTSC is in the part of the 60 hertz world, and that includes a number of other countries, including Japan. And
Japan's NTSC.
And that's right. And we were filming there, and I could see the modulation of the fluorescence and in the 30 hertz footage, and nothing really quite synchronized.
Oh dear.
Right.
Oh dear.
That's
I remember looking at the trivia. In IMDb, you've got bloopers. There was one blooper, and the guy was saying that there was a 60 hertz refresh issue in one of the shots, and he said this means it's not filmed in India because India was 25, so this is just wrong or something. I can't remember. And I'm like, how pedantic can you be?
All the computer monitors are typically 60 hertz.
Yeah.
And you're going to have a mismatch if you're shooting 24 or 25 frames. Even 30 frames, you
might be a little bit
be
off.
less perceptible. But it's a part of testing. You'd have to turn them all on and roll some footage on the camera and see if it flickers or not.
You know what? What if you had a 360? I know you couldn't do it physically before. What if you had a 360 degree shutter, as in like the shutter's always open? You can do them with digital cameras now. I wonder if that.
Well, that
solves
theory
it.
does work. So we're now in a world where LEDs are installed throughout the city, and wherever you go, you're going to find different frequencies from those.
Pulse width modulation.
That's right. And depending on how much money they invested in them, and most people won't invest very much, so they're going to be cheap and nasty.
Yes.
Running at a very low rate.
Terrible.
So you try to shoot high speed at 100 frames a second, you're going to start to see them turning on and off.
We can see them in the studio if you look long enough. When these LEDs cycle between a color, you're going to get some strobing. I don't know if it'll come out in the podcast.
Yeah, I just
because-
caught that in the background behind
I
me.
can see it on my monitor here, but yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So that's stepping through the different...
Yeah, but we take it out. We take it out with a plug-in.
The magic of
Fix it in
editing.
post.
The magic of editing.
Why don't you
funny
just
thing
fix
was-
it now?
Yeah, it's because when we had Peter Zing in, and he was on a tablet, Simo was like, "Wait, quick, just make sure you change the refresh rate to 30." And I'm like, "I didn't do it," and he had that issue, and I thought, "Oh, the plug-in will fix it." Plug-in didn't fix it because his monitor was at an angle,
Yeah,
and so it didn't detect it as a horizontal line, and it just left it in there. Oh gosh,
That's right. There's nothing's
Wow.
going to be perfect, and it's always going to be a fudge to try and get it to look right.
yeah.
Well, the simple answer is you set the camera to a 300 degree shutter, which is equal to 60 and 50 hertz.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I shoot a lot of high speed around town.
That's right.
Set it to 300, and generally most things synchronize.
That is amazing. That
Wow.
works.
We'll
It's
have to try that.
300.
Mm.
It's divisible by 50 and 60. Yeah.
I'm going to remember that one. I'm going to remember that one.
Nice.
That's great.
Yeah. And alternatively, here in Sydney, it's 25 hertz, frames per second with a 50 hertz power supply for all the lighting. But we want to shoot footage for America. So we're going to shoot at 2997. We can adjust the shutter angle to 216 degrees, and that will synchronize the 60 hertz or the 30 frames a second that we're shooting with the 50 hertz power supply.
Remember that music video with that Goulding?
Ellie Goulding.
Ellie Goulding?
Yeah.
Shot in the car park. Have you seen that clip?
Is it that bad?
Oh, is
It's
it painful?
strobing is like, they must have just got, look, just leave it in. It's like an effect. It's an
Wow.
intended effect.
But was it slow motion?
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you just bring that up?
Yeah,
Simo?
yeah.
Just bring it up. Let's see. Was it this clip? That was shot really nicely, and then they go in the car park. What happened there?
Oh, wow.
That's it. Looking for a giveaway that it's anamorphic.
Yeah, look, they would have put that in straight away. You can tell some of these music video clips. The first shot,
Yeah.
oval bokeh. It's like the director of DP going, there you go, flop it out. It's like, there it is.
Spend some money on the glass.
Wow,
Look at
man.
that. That's just.
I reckon?
Yeah.
It's a pretty deliberate. Well, it's on the screen.
There was
Yeah.
a clip from Ariana Grande.
Yeah.
I don't think they leveled the anamorphic glass completely level because she looked. It just seems like, and when you see it, then you can't unsee it. Her face is always a little bit distorted.
Well, talking about using that type of distortion and anamorphics to advantage. Is,
okay.
We do mump tests. And a mump test is where we would get a portrait of our talent and we'd shoot tests with the different anamorphic lenses, and then we'd line them all up in an edit, and their face either may be wider or their face might be thinner.
Oh yeah, I
And that's the curvature of the glass on the front may have been manufactured with slight different tolerances, and
yes,
it's could be to
barrel
your
distortion,
advantage.
all that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's just the manufacturer, lapping the glass and grinding it to shape. That there will be imperfections, and
Might make their nose bigger. Yeah.
yeah, so it's like some actresses may look stunning with that particular lens, and therein is the serial number that you're chasing, and others, and that only lens comes out when they're on screen for the close up, and then it goes away again.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
I remember famously, what's her name? Elizabeth Taylor had a close-up lens. Bought her own lens for her close-ups. I mean, but I do that anyway. Like, if somebody wanted to look thinner, I would give me anything on a full frame that's less than 50 millimeters. So as you get wider and wider in angle, it starts to make them look thinner. And anything more telephoto than 50 mil starts to make them look fatter.
Right.
And that's because, like let's say you take a person's face, if you're really far away, the distance between the camera lens and say my chin and the camera lens and my neck is almost negligible compared to the full distance. So it's like my neck's going to be thick. Whereas if you're really a lot closer and you have a 50 mil, like a less than 50 mil, like a 30 mil, my chin's going to be a lot closer than my neck, and so my neck's going to appear thinner.
Yeah.
And so you can make people look like they're.
You can modify the
you can
look.
modify
So I
them.
found this clip.
But then you've got TV that's always telephoto, and that's why you got the saying, TV.
Yeah,
adds
so the
10
studios
pounds.
would have a zoom, and they're probably all on 150 mil for all the close-ups. And
So everyone has weight gain on TV.
So you reckon this is a bit...
Yeah, look at it.
credit wrong.
Pause it. That's just twisted. That's twisted.
What are we looking for here?
A facial distortion.
Well,
Go play
by
more.
the size of it, could be a 40 or 50 mil anamorphic lens.
It does look a little bit
Yeah.
squished. actually.
choosing out 40 or 50 mil anamorphic lens, you're technically got the aspect of twice that width. So a 50 mil would be 25, 40 would be 20.
Yes,
And,
and
they have a bigger aperture, so you're going to get a wider field of view on that 40 mil. And a lot of the giveaways for those is that everything in the background has a barrel distortion. It just drops off and shrinks because it hasn't been corrected for, especially the vintage ones. And
I love that though.
there's rarely any
I love that
lens
look.
that's wider, apart from the 35. There may be some 28s or 30s, 32s.
Oh, okay.
But you're now getting into 16, 17 mil widths. And
yes.
trying to squeeze that all around a corner, and it's going to shift perspective.
I actually love that look. I love that look.
Yeah, well,
I hate the rectilinear look. I just hate it. I hate it when you've got a person's head is right in the corner and it's turned into a giant egg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just hate that. I hate it with a vengeance. I'd rather get the barrel distortion.
You'll probably find that photometrically that the portrait's going to look fine. It's just the background that throws out. These things I recognise when you're doing big sweeping moves and everything's sort of bulging and twisting as you're coming down to the street, and it's only until you settle down that sort of disappears into the scene. So you can
I found that
move
disturbing
so fast.
Remember that movie with Leonardo DiCaprio when they were in the wilderness?
The island, was it?
No.
The 18 mil Master Prime they stuck 5 inches from his eyeballs on the Revenant was
Revenant, yeah. Okay.
Oh.
quite a
I didn't.
interesting look.
That's a bit weird.
A questionable artistic choice, is that what you're saying?
Oh, look. Let's not. No,
If you're half dead, you're crawling yourself out of a frozen pit in the middle of North America. It was great. Get you a golden statue.
Yeah, definitely an artistic, decision.
Yeah.
You certainly have elongated his nose, and so as a portrait, he's been distorted, but he's pained and he's stretching his face.
Oh, so it was
himself.
deliberate then.
It would have been part of the.
It was a
aesthetic.
purposeful look to get this intensity out of him, and they've sort of taken advantage of the foreshortening and the distortion of his face to get probably even more strain out of him.
Yes.
If it was our wondrous, the beautiful filly age of 20, probably be going, oh, this is looking really weird.
Yeah.
I wouldn't suggest going that far. And that's where we need to look at a situation in close, tight spots that we may have an anamorphic lens. And then for the rest of the film, we swap it out and go to spherical for conventional shots because we've got the space. And I've seen that done on Strangerland where we had Nicole Kidman in the car and in close places, and the only time the cinematographer brought out the anamorphics was to correct the distortion on her face for those close shots, because if you use a wide angle and go close, you're just going to elongate her face.